Tonight we drift into the cobblestone streets of old Strasbourg, where summer heat and human mystery created one of history's strangest chapters. Close your eyes, let your breathing slow, and step with me into July 1518. The morning mist rises from the River Ill, carrying the scent of fresh bread and old stone. Somewhere in the distance, the church bell marks the hour, but time moves differently here. Slower, gentler, perfect for letting the day slip away. Before we begin our gentle journey through history, drop me a comment about where in the world you're listening from tonight. There's something beautifully peaceful about knowing we're all here together, scattered across time zones, sharing this quiet moment. Now settle deeper into your pillow. Feel the weight of your body against the mattress. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. We have a long, slow walk through medieval Strasbourg ahead, and there's no need to hurry. You are Katharina, wife of Hans the Miller. It's July 14th. In the year of our Lord 1518, the Holy Roman Empire stretches across Europe. But your world is smaller, cozier. It's bounded by Strasbourg's thick stone walls, by the gentle flow of the River Ill, by the familiar rhythm of grinding grain and baking bread. Your small timber house leans against its neighbors, like old friends sharing secrets. The morning air drifts through your window, cool and sweet, with the scent of the baker's first loaves. You've been married 15 years now. Your hands know the feel of flour, the weight of water buckets, the smooth wooden handle of your broom, worn by countless mornings, just like this one. But this morning feels different. There's a restlessness in your legs, a tiny tremor you can't quite place. You pause at your wash basin, looking at your reflection in the still water. Your face is familiar. Brown hair streaked with early gray, eyes the color of hazelnuts, skin marked by years of honest work. Yet something in your expression seems expectant. You dress slowly in your brown woolen skirt and linen camise, tying your leather belt with its small pouch for coins. Your wooden clogs echo softly on the floor. Outside, Strasbourg is waking up around you. Cartwheels on cobblestones, roosters crowing, the distant sound of the river flowing past the mills. The city is prosperous in these times. Trade flows through Strasbourg like water through a mill wheel. Merchants come from the German lands, from France, from the Italian states. The guilds are strong. The bakers, the tanners, the metalworkers, each group protecting their crafts and their families. Life has a rhythm here, predictable as the turning of the seasons. You step outside. The narrow street is already busy with familiar faces. Greta, the baker's wife, hurries past with a basket of loaves. Old Wilhelm tends his small garden, pulling weeds with gnarled but steady hands. Children chase a spotted dog between the houses, their laughter echoing off the walls. The morning air is warm, but not unpleasant. Summer in Strasbourg can be sweltering, but today carries a gentle breeze from the river. You walk toward the well, your clogs clicking on stones worn smooth by centuries of feet. The sound is rhythmic, almost musical. Click, click, click. Your steps seem to find a pattern on their own. At the well, you lower your wooden bucket into the cool depths. The rope slides through your hands, rough hemp that's pulled thousands of buckets before yours. The water below reflects the morning sky, pale blue with wisps of cloud, drifting like sheep across a meadow. As you pull the bucket up, your feet begin to tap, just slightly, a gentle rhythm against the stone rim of the well. Tap, tap, rest, like keeping time to a song only you can hear. Other women gather at the well. It's the heart of morning gossip, the place where news travels faster than any messenger. Margaret mentions that her youngest has a fever. Anna worries about her husband's cough. Bertha complains about the heat making her bread rise too quickly. The summer's been strange, says Margaret, wiping sweat from her brow, though the day is still cool. Too hot, too sudden. My hand says the grain will be ready early this year. You nod, but your attention drifts. Your feet have found a more complex pattern now. Right foot, left foot, both together. The rhythm feels natural, like breathing or the beating of your heart. You don't realize you're doing it until Anna touches your arm gently. Katharina, are you quite well? You blink, suddenly aware that you've been moving. The other women are watching you with expressions of mild concern. mixed with curiosity. Your cheeks flush warm. Of course, you say quickly, just thinking of the day's work. But even as you speak, your feet continue their gentle dance against the cobblestones. It doesn't hurt. If anything, it feels pleasant, like stretching after a long rest. The movement seems to ease some tension you didn't know you carried. You lift your water bucket and begin the walk home. Behind you, the women's voices resume their gentle chatter, but you catch fragments floating on the morning air. Seemed almost like she was dancing. Strange weather makes people do strange things. Remember old Marie last summer, talking to her chickens like they were people. Your steps quicken, but the rhythm remains. Right, left, right, left, right. Your bucket sloshes gently, water catching the light like scattered coins. The sound of your feet on stone creates a counterpoint to the water's movement. Music without melody, dance without celebration. By the time you reach your door, your breathing is quickened slightly, not from exertion, but from something else, something that makes your heart beat a little faster, your senses a little sharper. The morning light seems brighter, the scent of bread more fragrant, the sound of the river more distinct. You set down your bucket and look back toward the well. The women have dispersed, each returning to their daily tasks. The street looks ordinary again, peaceful, safe, but your feet are still moving. Take a deep breath now, dear reader. Let the morning air of old Strasbourg fill your lungs. Feel the weight of your own body settled comfortably wherever you're listening. Katharina's story is just beginning, and we have hours of gentle history ahead of us. No need to rush, no need to worry. Just let your breathing slow and your muscles relax as we follow this strange summer day, wherever it leads. Inside your house, the familiar tasks await. Sweeping the floor, preparing the noon meal, mending a tear in Hans's work shirt. Simple, necessary work that usually brings comfort. But today, even the mundane feels different. You pick up your broom and begin to sweep, back and forth. But somehow your movements add flourishes, a little spin at the end of each stroke, a gentle hop as you turn. The broom becomes a partner, and in dance only you can feel. The grain for the mill arrives in steady streams. Farmers bring their wheat in heavy sacks, and you help weigh it, record it, prepare it for grinding. Each transaction follows the same pattern it has for years. Old Friedrich brings 2 sacks of wheat and complains about his back. Young Stefan delivers oats for the horses and flirts mildly with every woman he meets. The widow Helga brings barley and asks after your health with genuine concern. But as you work, your body finds its own rhythm. When you walk between the scales in the storage room, your steps create patterns. When you pour grain from sack to bin, your arms move with unnecessary grace. When you speak with customers, you sway slightly, as if moved by music they cannot hear. You seem lively today, Katharina, observes Helga, her weathered face creased with curiosity. The fine weather, you reply, though you're not entirely sure that's the truth. The weather is fine, warm, but not oppressive, with a gentle breeze that carries the scent of the river and the distant mountains. But this feeling inside you seems to come from somewhere else, somewhere deeper. At midday, Hans returns from supervising the millstones. He's a good man, your husband, steady and kind, with hands permanently dusted with flour and eyes that crinkle when he smiles. He's built like his father was, broad shoulders, strong arms, the kind of man who can lift heavy sacks all day and still have energy for evening prayers. The stones are running smooth today, he says, washing his hands in the basin. Old Bergman's wheat is particularly fine this year. You nod and serve him bread and cheese, a bit of preserved meat, small ale, to wash it down. As you move around the table, setting out the meal, your feet continue their gentle pattern. Hans doesn't notice at first. He's tired, focused on his food, mentally calculating the day's work still ahead. But when you begin to clear the dishes, swaying slightly as you stack them, he looks up. Wife, are you feeling well? You pause, suddenly self-conscious. Quite well. Perhaps just happy. It's a beautiful day. Hans studies your face with the careful attention of a man who has loved the same woman for 15 years. He sees the flush in your cheeks, the brightness in your eyes, the way you can't quite stand still. You look feverish, he says, rising to touch your forehead with his palm. No heat, though. Are you certain you're not ill? I feel wonderful, you say. And it's true. Despite the strangeness, despite the unstoppable movement in your limbs, you feel more alive than you have in months. Truly, Hans, I've never felt better. He frowns, not entirely convinced, but returns to his meal. You try to stand still as you finish clearing, but it's like trying to hold your breath. Possible for a while, but ultimately your body demands what it demands. As Hans prepares to return to the mill, you touch his arm. The midsummer festival is next week, you say. Perhaps we could dance? You haven't danced together in years. Not since the harvest celebration 2 autumns ago, when the wine was particularly good and the fiddler played late into the night. Hans is not naturally graceful. He moves with the practical efficiency of a working man, but he tries. For your sake, if you wish, he says, kissing your forehead. Though I warn you, my feet remember more about millstones than music. After he leaves, you stand alone in your house. After he leaves, you stand alone in your house. The afternoon stretches ahead, warm and golden. Usually you would use this time for mending, or visiting neighbors, or preparing tomorrow's bread. Instead, you find yourself moving through your home, like a visitor in a strange land, touching familiar objects, as if seeing them for the first time. Your fingers trail along the wooden table, where you've eaten thousands of meals. Your palm rests against the stone of the fireplace that has warmed you through countless winters. Your feet trace patterns on the floorboards, worn smooth by your daily passages. And with each touch, each step, the rhythm grows stronger. By late afternoon, you can no longer stay inside. The walls feel too close, the air too still. You need space, room to move, the open sky above your head, so you step out into the street. And that's when everything changes. The moment your feet touch the cobblestones, the rhythm explodes through you like water through a broken dam. Not violent, not painful, but irresistible. Your body begins to move with a fluidity that surprises you. Steps become leaps, leaps become spins. The street becomes your dance floor. At first, the other residents of your narrow lane barely notice. People move through their daily routines with the comfortable blindness of long habit, but gradually, one by one, they begin to turn and stare. Young Peter, delivering bread from his father's bakery, stops mid-stride. His mouth falls open as he watches you glide past him, your brown skirt swirling, your arms extended for balance. The loaves in his basket grow cold as he stares. "Frau Katharina?" he calls out, but you cannot stop to answer. The movement has taken hold of you completely now. Your body belongs to the rhythm, not to your will. More people gather. Agnes from the house next door emerges with her washing, then drops the wet clothes back into her basket as she watches your impossible dance. Old Johann, hobbling on his walking stick, plants himself against a wall and stares with eyes wide as coins. "Is she ill?" someone whispers. "Possessed?" suggests another voice. "Drunk?" offers a third, though. It's barely past noon, and you're known as a sober woman, but you hear their voices as if from a great distance. The world around you has taken on a dreamlike quality. Colors seem brighter, sounds more distinct. The rough texture of the cobblestones beneath your feet, the warmth of the sun on your face, the sweet air moving in and out of your lungs. Everything feels heightened, immediate, almost unbearably vivid. You dance from your door to the corner where your lane meets the broader street. Here, more people stop to watch. A merchant with a cart full of pottery reins in his horse and gapes. 2 women carrying baskets of vegetables set down their loads and whisper behind their hands. A priest, young and earnest, hurries over with concern written across his face. "My daughter," he says, reaching out as if to steady you. "What troubles you? Are you in pain?" You try to answer, but words seem impossible. Your breath comes quick and light, not from exertion, but from something else. Joy? Fear? You cannot tell. The movement feels necessary, like breathing or blood flowing through your veins. To stop would be like trying to stop your heart from beating. The priest steps back, making the sign of the cross. Fetch the physician, he calls to the growing crowd. Quickly now. But even as people scatter to carry out his commands, more arrive to take their places. Word spreads through the narrow streets of Strasbourg with the speed of fire through dry grass. By the time you've danced your way to the small square near the Church of St. Lawrence, at least 30 people have gathered to watch. They form a loose circle around you, giving you space, but staying close enough to see every movement. Some pray quietly, others debate in hushed tones. A few laugh nervously, as people do when confronted with something they cannot understand. And still you dance. Your movements are not random or frantic. There's a pattern to them, a logic that your body understands, even if your mind does not. Sometimes you move in slow, graceful circles. Sometimes you skip and leap, like a child at play. Sometimes you spin with your arms outstretched, your face turned toward the sky. The sun moves across the heavens. Shadows lengthen. The crowd grows and shrinks as people come and go, drawn by curiosity, driven away by unease, drawn back again by fascination. And through it all, you dance. Let your breathing slow now, dear listener. Feel your own body settled and still, so different from Katharina's restless movement. We're following her through this strange afternoon, but you are safe and comfortable, letting the medieval world wash over you like a gentle tide. The story continues, but you can simply float along with it, as peaceful as a boat on a calm river. Dr. Hieronymus Brunschwig arrives as the church bells ring for Vespers. He's an elderly man, learned in the medical arts, with gray hair that curls around his ears, and hands stained by years of mixing herbs and examining patients. His apprentice follows behind, carrying a leather satchel filled with instruments and remedies. The crowd parts respectfully as he approaches. In a city like Strasbourg, physicians are rare and valued. Dr. Brunschwig, trained in Paris, studied the ancient texts of Galen and Hippocrates, understands the delicate balance of humors that governs human health. If anyone can explain what's happening to you, it would be him. He stops at the edge of your dancing space and observes carefully. His eyes are sharp, despite his age, taking in every detail, the flush in your cheeks, the rhythm of your breathing, the way your movements seem both controlled and uncontrollable. How long has she been thus? He asks the priest. Near 3 hours now, doctor. She began in her own street and danced her way here. She has not stopped, not even to drink water. Dr. Brunschwig nods thoughtfully. He's seen many strange ailments in his long career. Melancholia that keeps patients bedridden for months. Fits of rage that require restraints. Fevers that cause men to speak in tongues. But this is something new. Has she spoken? He inquires. Not a word. She seems unable to stop, even when directly addressed. And her general health. Is she known to be sickly? Never, says Agnes. Your neighbor, Katharina, is strong as an ox. Works from dawn to dusk. Never complains. She gestures helplessly at your spinning form. This is not like her at all. Dr. Brunschwig approaches cautiously. He's dealt with patients in various states of distress, and sometimes they can be dangerous to themselves or others. But you show no signs of violence, only this endless, purposeful movement. Frau Katharina, he calls out in a voice both gentle and authoritative. Can you hear me? You seem to turn toward his voice, but your feet never stop their complex pattern. Your eyes meet his for a moment, and he sees intelligence there, awareness, even a kind of desperate plea. But then the movement claims you again, spinning you away from his gaze. Fetch cool water, he instructs his apprentice, and prepare a draught of chamomile with poppy, something to calm the humors. As his apprentice hurries away, Dr. Brunschwig continues his examination from a distance. He notes that despite hours of continuous movement, you show no signs of exhaustion. Your breathing is elevated, but not labored. Your skin is warm, but not feverish. By all medical logic, you should have collapsed by now. In my considered opinion, he announces to the crowd, this is a disorder of the blood. The summer heat has overbalanced her natural humors, causing an excess of the sanguine temperament. The blood moves too quickly through her veins, compelling the body to motion. Some in the crowd nod sagely at this explanation. It sounds learned, scientific, reassuring. Others look less convinced. Then she can be cured? Asks the priest hopefully. With proper treatment, yes. We must cool the blood, restore balance. Perhaps some bloodletting to relieve the pressure. Certainly a course of cooling herbs, mint, willow bark. Perhaps some mercury to purge the excess heat. The apprentice returns with a wooden cup of water and a small vial of medicine. Dr. Brunschwig approaches you again, timing his movement to match yours. Drink, he says, holding out the cup as you spin past. You must restore the moisture in your body, but coordinating your movement with his stillness proves impossible. The cup is knocked from his hands, water splashing across the cobblestones. You seem not to notice, already spinning away into another complex pattern. Hold her, Dr. Brunschwig instructs several men in the crowd. Gently, but firmly. We must get the medicine into her system. 3 men step forward, the blacksmith, a merchant, and the priest himself. They approach carefully, trying to time their grab to your movements. But the moment their hands touch your arms, something extraordinary happens. For just an instant, they seem to move with you. Their feet find your rhythm. Their bodies sway in time with yours. Then they jerk back as if burned, shaking their heads in confusion. Did you feel that? Gasps the blacksmith, staring at his hands. The merchant nods, his face pale. Like music in my bones. Dr. Brunschwig frowns. This is not fitting any medical theory he knows. Stand back, he orders. All of you. We'll try a different approach. But even as he speaks, he notices something troubling. Young Peter, the baker's son who first saw you dancing, is shifting his weight from foot to foot, just slightly, just barely noticeable. But there's a rhythm to it, and near the back of the crowd, a woman is swaying gently, as if moved by a breeze that touches only her. Night falls over Strasbourg, but the square remains lit by torches and lanterns brought by the growing crowd. What began as a handful of curious neighbors has swollen to nearly 100 people, drawn by rumors that spread through the city like ripples on water. And you are no longer dancing alone. Young Peter was the first to join you. The baker's son, barely 16, had been watching you for hours when suddenly his feet simply began to move. One moment he was standing still among the observers. The next he was stepping and turning in the same inexplicable rhythm that held you. His mother screamed when she saw him. She pushed through the crowd, reaching for her son, but he danced away from her grasping hands with the same irresistible compulsion that moved you. Father and son, separated by 10 feet of cobblestone, both caught in the same mysterious current. Within an hour, 3 more had joined. Greet, the widow who sells apples at the market. Heinrich, a young apprentice tanner. Margot, barely 14, who had come with her family to gawk and stayed to dance. Dr. Brunschwig paces at the edge of the square, his medical certainty crumbling with each new dancer. This is no simple humoral imbalance. This is something beyond his understanding, beyond the reach of his herbs and bloodletting, and learned theories. Contagion, he mutters to his apprentice. But how? There's no fever, no obvious signs of disease, and I've never heard of any plague that spreads through observation alone. The city authorities arrive as the cathedral bells ring compline. Captain Werner of the city guard, a practical man who prefers problems he can solve with sword or rope. Master Conrad from the Merchants' Guild, worried about disruption to trade. Father Benedict from the cathedral, summoned by reports of possible demonic possession. They stand at the edge of the square, watching 5 people dance in the flickering torchlight. The sight is both beautiful and disturbing, graceful movements that seem joyful and desperate in equal measure. Can they not simply stop? Asks Captain Werner. We've tried, Dr. Brunschwig replies. Physical restraint proves problematic, and they seem unable to control the compulsion on their own. Demonic influence suggests Father Benedict, making the sign of the cross. Though I've seen no other signs, no speaking in tongues, no blasphemy, no signs of supernatural strength. Master Conrad watches with the calculating eyes of a man who measures everything in terms of profit and loss. How long can this continue? They'll need food, water, rest, and this gathering is blocking normal commerce. As if in response to his concern, you stumble slightly, the first sign of weakness you've shown since the dancing began. Your steps slow just a fraction, your breathing becomes more labored, but even as your body shows signs of exhaustion, your feet continue their relentless pattern. Bring food, orders Father Benedict, and water. We cannot simply let them dance themselves to death, but feeding dancers proves nearly impossible. Helpers try to place bread in your hands as you spin past, but coordination is difficult, and most falls to the ground. Water splashes uselessly as cups are knocked aside by your movements. Young Margot manages a few sips when a quick-thinking woman times the offering perfectly with her pattern, but it's clear that sustaining 5 people in constant motion will require more organization than the impromptu crowd can provide. As the night deepens, the dancing takes on a different quality. The movements become more synchronized, as if you and the others are responding to the same unheard music. Sometimes you dance in a line, sometimes in a circle, sometimes in complex patterns that weave between and around each other. The watching crowd grows quieter as the hours pass. What began as curiosity and excitement settles into something more like vigil. People bring stools and blankets, settling in for a long watch. Children fall asleep in their mother's arms. Men take turns bringing fresh torches to keep the square lit, and still you dance. Your brown skirt is torn now from hours of movement. Your hair has come loose from its careful braiding, flying wild around your face. Your wooden clogs gave up hours ago. Your feet are bare on the cold stone, but you seem not to notice the discomfort. Dr. Brunschwig makes notes in a small journal, documenting everything he observes, the symptoms, the progression, the attempts at treatment. If this is some new form of madness, some unknown disease, he wants to record it properly for future physicians. But privately, he's beginning to suspect that medicine will not be enough. Hans finds you near midnight. Your husband pushes through the crowd with desperate urgency, his face haggard with worry. He's been searching the city for hours, asking after you, following rumors and fragments of gossip, until they led him here. Katharina, he calls out, his voice breaking with emotion. You turn toward his voice, and for a moment your movements slow. Recognition flickers in your eyes. Love, concern, regret. A dozen emotions cross your face in the span of a heartbeat. Hands, you whisper, the first word you've spoken since the dancing began. He steps toward you, arms outstretched, ready to catch you if you fall, to hold you if you'll let him. But even as you reach toward him, your feet betray you. The rhythm claims you again, spinning you away from his embrace, back into the endless pattern. Hands follows, trying to match your movements, to dance with you as you asked him to do just this morning. But he's not touched by whatever force drives you. His steps are clumsy, uncertain. He cannot follow where you've gone. Help her, he pleads to Dr. Brunschwig. Please, she's all I have. The old physician places a gentle hand on Hans's shoulder. We're trying, my friend, but this is beyond any medicine I know. Hans sinks onto a stone bench, his head in his hands. Around him, the vigil continues. Torches burn low and are replaced. The children wake and are carried home. New observers arrive to replace those who have grown tired and left. And in the center of it all, 5 people dance through the night as if their lives depend on it. Perhaps they do. The eastern sky blushes pale pink as dawn approaches, but sleep seems as foreign to you as stillness. Through the long night, your body has found a kind of terrible equilibrium, exhausted but unable to rest, desperate but unable to stop. The crowd has thinned with the late hour, Only the most dedicated observers remain, wrapped in cloaks against the night chill, keeping their vigil by torchlight. Some pray quietly. Others simply watch with the fascination of people witnessing something unprecedented. You are dimly aware of their presence, but they seem as distant as figures in a dream. Your world has contracted to the immediate, the rhythm that drives your limbs, the stone beneath your feet, the burning in your lungs that you cannot ease. Young Margot collapsed an hour ago. The 14-year-old girl simply crumpled mid-spin, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion, but her legs continued to twitch and jerk, even as helpers carried her to a makeshift bed of straw. Her feet still moved in small, restless patterns, as if the dance had burrowed so deep into her body that sleep could not silence it. Now only 4 of you remain upright. You, Peter the baker's son, Greet the apple seller, and Henrik the tanner's apprentice. 4 people caught in an invisible web, moving to music that no one else can hear. As the sun climbs higher, the city begins to wake around you. Early risers emerge from their houses to find the square still occupied, the strange dance still continuing. Some stop to stare in amazement. They've heard rumors through the night, but seeing it firsthand is different. Others hurry past with averted eyes, crossing themselves, whispering prayers against evil influences. The cathedral bells ring for lauds, the morning prayer. Father Benedict, who left for a few hours of rest, returns with several other clerics. They've been discussing the situation, consulting their theological texts, debating the proper response to what might be divine judgment, demonic possession, or simple human madness. We've decided to try exorcism, Father Benedict announces to Dr. Brunschwig and the other authorities who gather around him. If this is spiritual in nature, medical treatment will prove useless. Dr. Brunschwig nods wearily. He's run out of medical options anyway. His attempts at treatment have all failed, and his theories grow less convincing with each passing hour. Perhaps the church will have better luck with their approaches. But even as the priests prepare their ritual, more practical concerns demand attention. The square is vital to Strasbourg's daily commerce. Merchants need to set up their stalls. Customers need access to the market. Normal life needs to continue despite the extraordinary events of the past day. We can't simply block trade indefinitely, Master Conrad points out. The guild masters are already complaining. And what if this condition spreads further? Captain Werner has been thinking along similar lines. Perhaps we should move them somewhere they can continue this dancing without disrupting the city's business. Move them where? Asks Father Benedict. There's the old grain hall near the river. Large, empty, away from the main commercial areas. We could set up a proper facility there. Food, water, medical attendance, spiritual counsel. Let this run its course in a controlled environment. Dr. Brunschwig considers this proposal. It has merit. Trying to treat patients in the middle of a public square, surrounded by gawkers and disrupted by commerce, is hardly ideal. A dedicated space would allow for better observation, more systematic treatment attempts. But how do we move them? He asks. They can't seem to stop dancing long enough to walk to another location. This proves to be a significant challenge. Any attempt to guide or carry the dancers results in the same disturbing phenomenon. Helpers begin to feel the rhythm themselves, their own feet starting to move in sympathetic patterns. It's as if whatever force drives the dancers is contagious through touch, spreading its influence to anyone who makes prolonged contact. Eventually, a solution emerges. Using long poles and ropes, volunteers create a kind of moving corral that can guide the dancers without direct physical contact. It's clumsy and slow, but it works. Step by step, the 4 remaining dancers are shepherded through Strasbourg's narrow streets toward the grain hall. The procession draws attention wherever it passes. People emerge from houses and shops to watch the strange parade. Children run alongside, fascinated by the unusual sight. Dogs bark and scatter, confused by the unfamiliar rhythm of movement. Hans walks beside the procession, his face etched with grief and helplessness. He's aged years in a single night, his hair seeming grayer, his shoulders more stooped. Every few minutes he calls out to you, trying to break through the compulsion that holds you. but you can no longer respond even with a glance. The grain hall is a large stone building with high ceilings and wide doors designed for loading heavy wagons. It's been empty for months. The guild is building a newer, larger facility closer to the docks, but it serves perfectly for this unprecedented purpose. Helpers quickly arrange the space. Straw is spread on the floor to cushion inevitable falls. Tables are set up along the walls for food and medical supplies. Chairs are arranged for observers and family members. Braziers are lit to provide warmth and light. As you and the other dancers are guided into this new space, something unexpected happens. The change of venue seems to energize the compulsion. Your movements become more vigorous, more complex. The rhythm that drives you grows stronger, more insistent, and within an hour of your arrival at the grain hall, 2 more people join the dance. Let your own breathing slow and deepen now, dear listener. Rest your head more comfortably against your pillow. We're settling into the grain hall with Katharina and the other dancers, but you are safe and still, watching this historical mystery unfold like a distant dream. The soft rhythm of your own breath is all the music you need as the strange medieval tale continues to spin itself around you. The priests step back, uncertain how to interpret this response. Is the laughter a sign that evil spirits are mocking their efforts? Or could it indicate something else entirely? Perhaps a kind of divine ecstasy, a spiritual experience beyond their understanding. They're not possessed, whispers Father Benedict to his colleagues, his voice filled with wonder rather than fear. Look at their faces. This isn't the torment of demonic influence. This is something else. And indeed, as you continue your endless dance, there's something transcendent in your expression. Your eyes, though focused on some invisible point, hold a clarity that wasn't there before. Your movements, while still compulsive, have taken on an almost ceremonial quality, as if you're participating in a ritual whose meaning you don't fully understand, but whose importance you somehow feel in your very bones. The grain hall develops its own ecosystem. Over the following days, Hans brings fresh bread from his bakery each morning, though you can barely pause long enough to take a few bites. Other family members arrive with clothing, blankets, small comforts that seem almost absurd in the circumstances, but somehow matter nonetheless. The 2 new dancers who joined on the first day in the hall are Anna, a young widow from the textile quarter, and Friedrich, a middle-aged clerk from the cathedral. Their arrival follows the same pattern. First the subtle tapping of feet, then the gradual surrender to the rhythm, finally the complete abandonment to whatever force drives the dance. Dr. Brunschwig interviews each family, searching for common factors. What did these people eat? Where did they go? What did they have in common? But his careful questioning reveals nothing useful. The dancers come from different quarters of the city, different trades, different social classes. Some are young, some older, some healthy, some already weakened by previous illness. There's no pattern, he admits to Father Benedict. No logical explanation for why these particular individuals and not others. But Father Benedict has begun to develop a different theory. He spends long hours watching the dancers, noting the peaceful expressions that often cross their faces, the moments of what appears to be profound joy or spiritual transport. What if this isn't a curse at all? He muses. What if it's a calling? The idea seems radical, even heretical, but he can't shake it. Throughout Christian history, there have been accounts of mystical experiences, of people overwhelmed by divine presence. The dancing saints, the ecstatic visions of holy men and women. Could this be something similar? Meanwhile, the practical challenges of caring for the dancers continue. They need to eat, though they can rarely stop long enough for proper meals. They need water, especially in the summer heat that builds even inside the stone hall. They need rest, though true rest seems impossible. Most disturbingly, they need to relieve themselves, and this proves one of the most difficult aspects of their care. Helpers must time these moments carefully, using the brief seconds when a dancer might pause or slow their movements. It's undignified, heartbreaking, and yet somehow the dancers seem to accept even this with the same serene detachment they show toward everything else. They're like pilgrims, observes Maria, the herb woman, who's become one of the primary caregivers. Pilgrims who've left the normal world behind and entered something sacred. By the end of the first week in the grain hall, word has spread far beyond Strasbourg. Visitors arrive from neighboring towns and cities, some seeking to witness the miracle or curse for themselves, others bringing theories and potential cures. A scholarly physician from Basel arrives with an elaborate theory about sympathetic vapors rising from the earth. A mystic from the Rhineland claims the dancers are channeling the spiritual energy of ancient sacred sites. A traveling merchant insists he's seen similar phenomena in distant lands, always associated with particular phases of the moon, but none of the proposed explanations or treatments prove effective. The dance continues, day and night, with a persistence that begins to feel less like affliction and more like devotion. As the days pass in the grain hall, something profound begins to emerge from what initially appeared to be chaos. The dancers' movements start to synchronize in ways that suggest they're responding to the same unheard music, participating in the same invisible choreography. You find yourself stepping in harmony with Anna the widow, turning when she turns, pausing when Friedrich pauses. It's as if you're all voices in the same choir, instruments in the same orchestra, though the music you're playing remains mysteriously silent to all but yourselves. The watching families begin to notice this coordination, and it brings them strange comfort. Whatever force has claimed their loved ones, it doesn't seem malevolent. The dancers move with purpose, with grace, with something that looks increasingly like joy, despite the obvious physical strain. Dr. Brunschvig documents these observations carefully, noting how the compulsive quality of the dancing seems to be transforming into something more voluntary, more conscious. The dancers still cannot stop, but they no longer appear to be struggling against their condition. Instead, they seem to be collaborating with it, finding ways to make the endless movement bearable, even meaningful. It's as if they're learning a new language, he writes in his journal, a language of movement that speaks truths their words cannot express. Outside the grain hall, Strasbourg continues its daily business, but the presence of the dancers creates ripples throughout the city. People find themselves walking differently, more aware of their own rhythms. Musicians report strange inspirations, melodies that seem to come from somewhere beyond their conscious minds. Even the city's clockmakers notice their timepieces running with unusual precision, as if synchronized to some deeper temporal current. The dance is changing everything it touches, spreading its influence in ways too subtle to measure, but too persistent to ignore. On the 9th day, something changes in the grain hall that makes everyone, observers, family members, clerics, and physicians alike, step back and reconsider everything they thought they understood about the dancing plague. It begins with little Thomas, the 8-year-old son of Greet the apple seller. He's been coming to the hall daily with his grandmother, bringing his mother small offerings of food and water. Like the other family members, he's learned to stay well back from the dancers, having seen how the compulsion can spread through touch. But children don't always follow rules, especially when they're watching their beloved mother trapped in something they can't comprehend. That morning, as Greet dances past the spot where Thomas sits with his grandmother, he suddenly stands and calls out, "Mama, Mama, I made you a flower crown." He's woven together dandelions and clover from the field behind their house, the kind of simple gift that usually brings his mother such joy. Before his grandmother can stop him, Thomas runs toward his mother, holding out the wilted flowers. Greet's eyes, which have been focused on that invisible point in the distance for days, suddenly clear. She sees her son, really sees him, and for just a moment, she stops dancing. The hall falls silent. Even the other dancers pause, as if the breaking of one person's rhythm has disrupted whatever force holds them all. Thomas reaches his mother and wraps his small arms around her waist. Tears stream down Grady's face as she looks down at her son, and for a heartbeat, everyone watching believes the spell might be broken by simple human love. But then the rhythm returns, stronger than before, and this time, It takes Thomas with it. The boy's feet begin to move. Small steps at first, almost like skipping. His grandmother screams and rushes forward, but Dr. Brunschwig catches her arm. "Don't touch him," he warns urgently. "You'll only join them." Thomas looks up at his mother, confused but not frightened. He's dancing now, his small body moving in harmony with hers, and there's a kind of wonder in his expression, as if he's discovered something magical. The sight of a child caught in the dance galvanizes the authorities into more desperate action. Captain Werner posts guards at all entrances to the grain hall, with strict orders to prevent anyone from making direct contact with the dancers. Dr. Brunschwig sends urgent messages to physicians in Paris and Vienna, pleading for any knowledge that might help. Father Benedict organizes continuous prayer vigils, calling upon every saint who might offer intercession. But even as they work frantically to find solutions, the dance evolves in ways that make their task more difficult. The dancers begin to move in patterns that seem almost choreographed. You find yourself stepping in time with Peter, turning when Heinrich turns, pausing when little Thomas pauses. It's as if you're all following the same invisible conductor, participating in the same unheard symphony. And the music, for there is music, even though no instruments play in the grain hall, becomes more complex. You hear it not with your ears, but with your entire body. Melodies that make your heart race and rhythms that pull at your very soul. Sometimes it's joyful, lifting your spirits until you feel you might dance forever without fatigue. Other times, it's melancholy. The observers begin to notice other changes as well. The dancers rarely seem to feel pain, even when they stumble or collide with walls. Their endurance defies all medical understanding. They should have collapsed from exhaustion days ago, yet they continue with undiminished energy. Most remarkably, they begin to show signs of what can only be described as enhanced awareness. You seem to sense when family members enter the hall, even when they're behind you. You avoid obstacles without looking, navigate around other dancers with fluid precision, catch yourself when you stumble before anyone else even realizes you're falling. It's as if they're all connected, Maria observes to Dr. Brunschwig, like parts of the same body or voices in the same choir. Dr. Brunschwig makes careful notes, but privately he's beginning to admit that this phenomenon lies beyond the boundaries of his medical knowledge. The dancers aren't getting sicker. If anything, they seem to be thriving in ways that make no scientific sense. By the end of the second week, 12 people dance in the grain hall. The newest additions include Master Heinrich's wife, who touched her husband briefly while bringing him water, and Brother Marcus, a young monk who came to offer spiritual counsel and stayed too close for too long. The pattern is always the same: a moment of contact, a gradual awakening of rhythm in the feet, then complete surrender to whatever force drives the dance. And once begun, the compulsion seems absolute. No amount of willpower, prayer, or medical intervention can break it. But perhaps most unsettling of all is the growing sense that the dancers don't want to be cured. When well-meaning helpers try to restrain them or block their movements, they don't struggle against the interference with desperation or panic. Instead, they wait with infinite patience for the obstacle to move, then continue their dance as if nothing had happened. They're not prisoners of the rhythm, they're devotees. On the 15th morning, Father Benedict arrives at the grain hall with a radical proposal. He spent sleepless nights in prayer and study, consulting ancient texts and seeking divine guidance, and he's reached a conclusion that surprises even himself. "We're going to take them to the shrine," he announces to the assembled authorities. "Which shrine?" asks Dr. Brunschwig, though something in the priest's tone suggests he already knows the answer. "St. Vitus, the chapel in the hills outside the city. If this is indeed a manifestation of the saint's influence, a calling rather than a curse, then bringing them to his holy place may provide the resolution we seek." The proposal triggers intense debate. Moving the dancers once was difficult enough, and that was only across the city. The shrine of St. Vitus lies 3 miles beyond Strasbourg's walls, up winding hill paths, that would challenge healthy pilgrims, let alone people trapped in compulsive dance. But traditional treatments have failed completely. Medical intervention proves useless. Exorcism has been unsuccessful, and the dance shows no signs of abating on its own. More troubling still, it continues to spread. 2 more citizens joined the dancers just yesterday, a cooper's apprentice and an elderly woman from the Jewish quarter, bringing the total to 14. Captain Werner raises practical concerns. How do we move them? We can barely manage them in a controlled environment, like the grain hall, on open roads, with crowds of curious onlookers, pilgrims, and potential troublemakers. We clear the route. Father Benedict replies with surprising firmness. This is a sacred procession now, not a medical transport. We'll organize it as a formal pilgrimage, with all the protections and procedures that entails. Dr. Brunschwig remains skeptical, and if the journey kills them, they've been dancing for over 2 weeks, without proper rest. The physical strain of walking 3 miles while maintaining this compulsion. They're stronger than they should be, Father Benedict points out. You've documented that yourself. Whatever power sustains them may also protect them during the journey. The debate continues through the morning, but gradually consensus emerges. They have few alternatives left, and the situation in the grain hall is becoming increasingly untenable. Supplies are running low, sanitation is becoming a serious problem, and the constant presence of so many onlookers is turning the sacred mystery of the dance into something approaching a carnival. Preparations begin immediately. Captain Werner organizes a guard detail to clear and secure the route. The city council votes emergency funds to purchase proper supplies for the journey. Local guilds volunteer assistance, perhaps hoping that resolving the crisis will allow commerce to return to normal. Most importantly, Father Benedict meets with the families of the dancers to explain his theory and gain their consent for the pilgrimage. I believe your loved ones have been chosen, he tells them in the grain hall that evening, his voice carrying both compassion and conviction. Chosen for what? I cannot say. But this isn't madness or demonic possession. This is a calling that must be answered. Hans looks up from where he's been sitting beside you, watching your endless dance with eyes that show both grief and growing acceptance. You really think this might cure her? Father Benedict chooses his words carefully. I think it might complete whatever has begun in her. Whether that means a return to her former life or a transformation into something else, I cannot promise. But I believe the journey itself is necessary. As if in response to his words, you turn suddenly and look directly at your husband. For the first time in days, your eyes focus clearly on his face. You can't speak. The rhythm won't allow you to pause long enough, but something passes between you. Understanding, perhaps, or forgiveness, or simply love that transcends the strange circumstances that have claimed you. Now let yourself sink deeper into that comfortable drowsiness, dear listener. Your eyelids are heavy, your breathing slow and deep. You're following these medieval pilgrims toward their mysterious destination, but you remain safely in your own bed, warm and still and peaceful. The procession forms at dawn on the 16th day. The dancers are positioned in the center, surrounded by a moving barrier of guards carrying long staffs to prevent unauthorized contact. Family members walk alongside, carrying water and food. Father Benedict leads the group, bearing the cathedral's most precious relic of Saint Vitus, a finger bone set in silver and crystal. Behind the official procession comes a growing crowd of followers. Word of the pilgrimage has spread throughout the region, drawing the curious, the devout, and the desperate. Some come seeking miracles for their own ailments. Others hope to witness divine intervention. A few bring musicians, thinking that earthly music might somehow complement or counteract the heavenly rhythm that drives the dancers. The journey begins through Strasbourg's narrow streets, past familiar shops and houses that now seem like artifacts from a distant life. The dancers move in their established patterns, but the change of scenery seems to energize them. Their steps become more elaborate, their movements more joyful. Several begin to sing, wordless melodies that harmonize with each other in ways that suggest they're hearing the same celestial music. As the procession passes through the city gates and onto the open road leading to the hills, something remarkable happens. The dancers' movements begin to synchronize more completely than ever before. They step together, turn together, raise their arms in unison. It's as if the approaching shrine is drawing them into perfect harmony. But the journey is not without its dangers. The physical strain of dancing while walking uphill taxes even their enhanced endurance. Young Thomas, despite his supernatural vitality, begins to stumble more frequently. Two of the adult dancers develop bleeding feet that leave red traces on the dusty road. Most challenging of all, the growing crowd of followers becomes increasingly difficult to control. Some press forward, hoping to touch the dancers and receive healing. Others throw flowers or religious medals, creating hazards underfoot. A group of flagellants joins the procession, believing the dancing plague is a sign of the apocalypse that requires dramatic penance.
Doctor.
Brunchwig walks alongside, making notes and monitoring the dancer's condition as best he can. Despite his medical training, he finds himself drawn into the strange atmosphere of the pilgrimage. The boundary between scientific observation and spiritual witness begins to blur. Are we watching a cure or a culmination? He wonders aloud to Father Benedict as they climb the winding path toward the shrine. Perhaps, the priest replies, there's no difference. The chapel of St. Vitus sits on a hilltop overlooking the Rhine Valley, a small stone building that has stood for 3 centuries, weathered by countless seasons, but maintained by the devotion of pilgrims. As your procession winds up the final slope, the late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the ancient walls, giving the shrine an otherworldly glow that seems to call to something deep within your dancing soul. The moment the dancers come within sight of the chapel, their behavior changes dramatically. The synchronized movements that develop during the journey become even more precise, more ceremonial. You find yourself moving, not just in time with the other dancers, but in specific patterns that seem to spiral around the shrine itself, as if the building is the center of some vast invisible mandala. Father Benedict stops at the chapel entrance, raising the crystal reliquary containing St. Vitus's fingerbone. The afternoon light catches the silver setting, sending sparks of illumination across the faces of the assembled crowd. A hush falls over the pilgrims, broken only by the soft sounds of the dancers' feet on the worn stone path. St. Vitus, Father Benedict calls out, his voice carrying across the hilltop, patron of dancers and those afflicted with uncontrollable movements. We bring these faithful souls to your holy place. Grant them peace, grant them healing, grant them the resolution their spirits seek. As his words echo off the chapel walls, something extraordinary happens. The dancers, who have been moving continuously for over 2 weeks, suddenly stop. Complete stillness descends on the hilltop. Even the wind seems to pause, as if the entire world is holding its breath. You stand motionless for the first time in 16 days, your body swaying slightly as it adjusts to the absence of the driving rhythm that has ruled your every movement. The silence stretches for 1 heartbeat, 2, 3. Hope flickers in the eyes of watching family members. Dr. Brunchwig leans forward, his medical mind racing to understand what he's witnessing. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the silence breaks. But what emerges is not the resumption of the compulsive dance. Instead, the dancers begin to move in what can only be described as a formal ritual. You step forward first, approaching the chapel entrance with movements that are deliberate and reverent, rather than compulsive. The other dancers follow, forming a line that spirals around the small building. Each person moves at their own pace now, no longer bound by the shared rhythm, but guided by something deeper and more personal. Little Thomas reaches the chapel door first. His small hand touches the worn wood, and for a moment, his face is illuminated by an expression of pure joy. He looks back at his mother Great, with eyes that are completely clear and present, then steps across the threshold into the sacred space. One by one, the other dancers follow. Peter the baker's son pauses at the entrance to cross himself before entering. Anna the widow presses her palm to the stone doorframe as if greeting an old friend. Heinrich, the tanner's apprentice, removes his cap with hands that shake not from compulsion but from reverence. You are the last to approach the threshold. Hands walks beside you now, no longer held back by fear of contagion. The dancing plague has transformed into something else entirely. A pilgrimage in the truest sense, a journey toward divine encounter. Let yourself drift deeper into sleep now, dear listener. Feel the peace that comes with journey's end, the rest that follows long effort. Your body is completely relaxed, your breathing slow and natural, as weakness flows loosen of the strange and the slow and natural. It's strange medieval mystery. Inside the chapel, the atmosphere is thick with centuries of prayer and devotion. Votive candles flicker before painted saints, casting moving shadows on walls darkened by age and incense. The dancers spread throughout the small space, some kneeling before the altar, others standing in quiet contemplation, a few lying prostrate on the stone floor, in attitudes of complete surrender. Father Benedict enters last, carrying the reliquary with trembling hands. He's beginning to understand that he's not just witnessing a cure, but a profound spiritual event that will reshape his own understanding of divine intervention. The change in the dancers is immediate and obvious. The supernatural endurance that sustained them for over 2 weeks suddenly vanishes, replaced by very human exhaustion. Thomas curls up on a bench, falling into the deep sleep of childhood. Greet sits beside him, stroking his hair with hands that are finally, blessedly still. But it's not simply a return to their former selves. Each dancer bears the marks of their extraordinary experience. Their eyes hold a depth that wasn't there before, a quality of having seen beyond the ordinary world. Their movements, even in this moment of rest, retain a gracefulness that speaks of the celestial choreography they've shared. Dr. Brunschwig moves among them, checking pulses, observing breathing, noting the various ways their bodies are readjusting to normal human limitations. Medically, they should be in far worse condition, dehydrated, malnourished, suffering from exposure and exhaustion. Instead, they seem remarkably well, as if the same force that compelled their dance also protected them during its duration. What have they become? He wonders aloud. Father Benedict, kneeling before the altar with the reliquary cradled in his hands, looks up with tears streaming down his face. They've become what they were always meant to be, he whispers. Witnesses. Outside the chapel, the crowd of pilgrims maintains a respectful distance, sensing that something sacred is taking place within the ancient walls. Some pray, some weep, some simply watch in awe. Word is already spreading down the hillside towards Strasbourg. The dancing plague has ended, not in madness or death, but in mystery and transformation. As evening falls over the Rhine Valley, the dancers rest in the shrine of Saint Vitus, their extraordinary ordeal complete. They will return to Strasbourg changed, carrying within themselves the memory of a rhythm that touched the very foundations of existence, a dance that bridged the earthly and divine. But that is a story for another time. For now, in this sacred space, they simply rest in the peace that comes after great effort, the stillness that follows profound movement. And you, dear listener, can rest as well, letting this strange tale of medieval mystery settle into your dreams like a lullaby from distant centuries. Dawn breaks gently over the shrine of Saint Vitus, filtering through the chapel's ancient windows to wake the dancers from their first natural sleep in over 2 weeks. You open your eyes to find yourself lying on a simple straw pallet covered by Hans's cloak. Your body stiff and sore but blessedly still. The silence is profound. After so many days of constant movement, the absence of the driving rhythm feels almost deafening. You wiggle your toes experimentally, expecting them to spring into motion, but they remain peacefully motionless under the rough wool blanket. Around you, the other dancers are awakening with similar wonder. Little Thomas sits up, rubbing his eyes, looking around the chapel with the confusion of a child waking in an unfamiliar place. His mother Greet reaches for him instinctively, and for the first time since the dancing began, she's able to simply hold him, to offer the comfort of stillness and maternal presence. Father Benedict has maintained vigil through the night, praying and watching over the sleepers with the dedication of a shepherd guarding his flock. As the dancers begin to stir, he moves among them quietly, offering water and soft words of reassurance. "How do you feel?" he asks each in turn, though the question seems almost inadequate to address what they've experienced. The answers vary, but they share common themes. Exhaustion, yes, but also a strange lightness, as if some burden carried for years has finally been lifted. Confusion about the dancing itself. Most remember only fragments, like trying to recall a vivid dream that slips away upon waking. And beneath it all, a sense of having touched something profound, something that has changed them in ways they don't yet understand. Dr. Brunschwig conducts more thorough examinations as the morning progresses. The dancer's physical condition is better than he dared hope. Some have blistered feet and sore muscles, minor injuries that will heal with rest and care. But there are no signs of the serious complications he feared. No heart damage from prolonged exertion, no lasting effects from dehydration or malnutrition. More puzzling are the things he finds that shouldn't be there. Peter the baker's son had suffered from a chronic cough for months before the dancing began, a lingering effect of a winter illness. Now his breathing is clear and strong. Anna the widow had complained of joint pain that made her daily work difficult. She moves now with an ease she hasn't felt in years. It's as if the dancing healed them, even as it exhausted them. Dr. Brunschwig confides to Father Benedict, "I have no medical explanation for what I'm observing." Father Benedict nods thoughtfully. Perhaps some experiences exist beyond the reach of medical explanation. Perhaps some healings require a different kind of understanding. By mid-morning, preparations begin for the return journey to Strasbourg. The dancers are weak and need assistance, but they're eager to go home, to return to the ordinary world they left behind 2 weeks ago. The crowd of pilgrims that gathered for the procession has largely dispersed, carrying news of the miracle back to their own communities. But the journey down the hillside proves almost as remarkable as the dance itself. As the small group makes its way along the winding path, they encounter person after person who claims to have been touched by the experience. A lame beggar says his legs grew stronger while watching the dancers pass. The merchant's wife insists her chronic headaches vanished after she glimpsed the procession. A child's fever broke the moment the pilgrims' bells rang in her village. Are these real healings, or the power of suggestion? Dr. Brunschwig wonders aloud. Does it matter? Father Benedict replies, if faith can move mountains, perhaps it can also move the barriers between sickness and health, between despair and hope. Let your mind drift peacefully now, dear listener, as we follow these transformed souls back to their everyday lives. Feel yourself sinking deeper into the comfort of your bed, your breathing slow and rhythmic, carrying you toward the restful sleep that follows long journeying. The return to Strasbourg takes most of the day, with frequent stops to allow the weakened dancers to rest. As they near the city gates, word of their approach spreads quickly through the streets. Crowds gather, not with the morbid curiosity that marked the beginning of the plague, but with something approaching reverence. The grain hall has been cleaned and aired in their absence, transformed from a makeshift hospital back into its intended purpose. But somehow it feels smaller now, more mundane, unable to contain the vastness of what occurred within its walls. Over the following days, as the former dancers recover their strength, they begin to integrate their experience into the fabric of their daily lives. You return to the bakery, working alongside hands to knead dough and tend the ovens. But sometimes, in the rhythm of kneading or the pattern of scoring loaves, you catch an echo of that other rhythm, that celestial music that once moved your very soul. Thomas goes back to his childhood games and lessons, but his mother notices he moves with an unusual grace now, as if he's learned some secret of balance and harmony. Peter returns to his father's bakery with a new appreciation for the simple miracle of bread rising, of grain transformed through patience and care. The experience bonds the former dancers in ways that outsiders find difficult to understand. They often gather in the evenings, not to dance. The compulsion is completely gone, but to share quiet conversation and the companionship of those who've traveled together through mystery. Dr. Brunschwig publishes a detailed account of the dancing plague, but his clinical language struggles to capture the true nature of what he witnessed. His medical training provides frameworks for describing symptoms and treatments, but offers no vocabulary for the spiritual transformation he observed. Father Benedict incorporates the experience into his theology, developing a new understanding of how divine grace might manifest in the world. His sermons begin to reflect a deeper appreciation for the mysterious ways that suffering and blessing interweave in human experience. And gradually, as summer turns to autumn, the dancing plague of 1518 settles into the collective memory of Strasbourg. It becomes a story told by grandparents to grandchildren, a reminder that the world contains mysteries beyond human understanding, experiences that can transform ordinary people into something greater than themselves. But for you and the others who lived through it, it remains not just a story, but a defining experience. A reminder that beneath the surface of everyday life runs a deeper current, a rhythm that connects all things in patterns, too vast and beautiful for the rational mind to fully comprehend. Months pass. The cobblestones of Strasbourg's market square, no lasting trace of the extraordinary events that unfolded there in the summer of 1518. Merchants spread their wares. Children play. Daily life continues its ancient rhythms. But for those who experience the dancing plague, either as participants or witnesses, the world has been subtly, permanently altered. You've settled back into the routines of married life and bakery work. But Hans notices changes in you that go deeper than the physical recovery. Dr. Brunschwig documented. You move through your daily tasks with a quality of presence that wasn't there before, as if you're listening to something just beyond ordinary hearing. Sometimes, while shaping loaves or sweeping flour from the work surfaces, you pause and tilt your head slightly, and he knows you're remembering that other music, that rhythm that once ruled your every movement. Do you miss it? He asks one quiet evening, as you sit together by the fire, the bakery closed and still after the day's work. The question surprises you. You've been asked many times about the dancing, by neighbors, by visiting scholars, by clergy from other cities who've heard tales of the miracle, but no one has ever asked if you missed the experience that so terrified them. You consider carefully before answering. I missed the certainty, you say finally. For those weeks, I knew exactly what I was supposed to be doing at every moment. There was no doubt, no choice to make. Just purpose. Hans nods thoughtfully. He's watched you struggle sometimes with the return to ordinary decision-making. The small daily choices that once seemed effortless, but now carry unexpected weight. What to bake first, which customer to serve, how to spend the evening hours. Freedom, it seems, can be more difficult than compulsion. Little Thomas has adapted to post-dancing life more easily, with the resilience of childhood, but his play has taken on new dimensions. He creates elaborate games involving spinning and turning, organizing the neighborhood children into complex patterns of movement. His mother Greet watches these games with a mixture of pride and concern, recognizing echoes of that supernatural choreography in her son's innocent entertainment. Peter the baker's son has become something of a local celebrity, sought out by visitors who want to hear first-hand accounts of the dancing plague. He's developed a gift for storytelling, weaving the fragmentary memories of those lost weeks into narratives that capture both the terror and wonder of the experience. But he's careful to emphasize the spiritual dimensions rather than the spectacular aspects, understanding instinctively that what happened was sacred rather than merely strange. Now let your breathing deepen, dear listener, as we explore how this medieval mystery rippled outward through time and memory. Your eyelids are growing heavy, your body sinking deeper into comfort and rest, while your mind follows these echoes across the centuries. Dr. Brunschwig has become one of the most sought-after physicians in the German states, not for his ability to cure dancing plagues, which seemed to be thankfully rare, but for his documented approach to observing and recording unusual medical phenomena. His detailed notes from the Strasbourg outbreak have been copied and distributed to medical schools throughout Europe, becoming a template for scientific inquiry into conditions that challenge conventional understanding. But late at night, when he's alone in his study reviewing those careful observations, Dr. Brunschwig finds himself returning again and again to the questions that his medical training cannot answer. What force sustained the dancers beyond normal human endurance? How did their movements achieve such precision without conscious choreography? Why did the experience seem to heal some conditions even as it created others? He's begun corresponding with scholars in other fields, theologians, natural philosophers, even musicians, seeking frameworks that might accommodate the full scope of what he witnessed. Gradually, he's developing a more holistic approach to medicine, one that recognizes the interconnection of body, mind, and spirit in ways his earlier training never acknowledged. Father Benedict has been appointed to a position at the cathedral in Cologne, partly in recognition of his sensitive handling of the dancing plague crisis. His new responsibilities include investigating reports of miraculous events throughout the Rhine region, a role that seems perfectly suited to someone who learned to look beyond surface appearances to deeper spiritual realities. He carries with him the crystal reliquary that held Saint Vitus's finger bone during the pilgrimage to the shrine. Sometimes, when examining reports of other unusual phenomena, he finds himself touching the crystal and remembering the moment when 14 people stopped dancing in perfect unison, their extraordinary ordeal transformed into sacred experience. His theological writings, from this period, reflect a mature understanding of divine action in the world, not as spectacular intervention that contradicts natural law, but as the deeper rhythm that underlies all existence, occasionally breaking through to conscious awareness in ways that transform those who experience it. As autumn deepens into winter, the former dancers develop informal traditions of gathering, not for reunion exactly, but for the quiet companionship of shared experience. They meet sometimes in the cathedral after evening mass, sometimes in each other's homes, sometimes simply walking together through Strasbourg's familiar streets. These gatherings have a contemplative quality that outsiders find both appealing and slightly unsettling. The conversation flows easily between mundane concerns and profound questions, as if the boundary between everyday life and mystery has become permanently more permeable for those who've crossed it once. Children are drawn to these gatherings, perhaps sensing something peaceful and centered in the adults who speak so naturally about experiences beyond ordinary understanding. Thomas often brings friends, and gradually a new generation grows up with a more expansive sense of what's possible in human experience. Years pass. The dancing plague of 1518 becomes historical fact, documented in chronicles and medical texts, studied by scholars and referenced by theologians. But it also becomes something more subtle, and perhaps more important. A story that expands the imagination, that suggests the world contains depths of meaning and connection that rational analysis alone cannot fathom. The former dancers grow older, their children marry and have children of their own, but the memory of those extraordinary weeks continues to shape their understanding of life's possibilities. You teach your daughter to knead bread with the same attentiveness you learned during your dancing days, fully present to each fold and turn, aware of the rhythm that transforms simple ingredients into sustenance. When your granddaughter asks about the dancing plague, you struggle to find words that can convey the reality of an experience that transcended ordinary language. How do you explain to a child that for 2 weeks you moved in perfect harmony with forces beyond human understanding? How do you describe the peace that came with surrender to a rhythm greater than personal will? It was like being part of a song, you tell her finally. A song so beautiful that your whole body had to dance to it, even when you were tired, even when you wanted to rest. And when the song ended, we were different people than when it began. She nods solemnly, the way children do when they sense they're being told something important they don't yet fully understand. But the seed is planted, the awareness that life contains mysteries worth embracing rather than fearing. 25 years after the dancing plague, A young scholar named Johannes arrives in Strasbourg to investigate what he calls the most thoroughly documented case of mass psychogenic illness in the historical record. He's traveling through the German states, collecting accounts of unusual group behaviors, seeking to develop new theories about the relationship between individual psychology and collective experience. Johannes interviews the surviving dancers, now middle-aged citizens, whose extraordinary experience has been integrated into decades of ordinary living. He expects to find evidence of shared delusion, perhaps triggered by ergot poisoning from contaminated grain, or mass hysteria, triggered by social and economic stress. Instead, he encounters something that challenges all his academic frameworks. You receive him in your home, now expanded to include a larger bakery and living quarters for your growing family. Your hair is streaked with gray, your hands marked by years of kneading dough. But Johannes notices immediately the quality of presence that Dr. Brunschwig documented decades earlier, an alertness and centeredness that seems to encompass more than ordinary attention. Tell me about the beginning, he requests, quill poised over parchment. What do you remember of the first moments when the dancing began? You consider his question carefully, as you've learned to do when discussing the experience. I remember the stillness first, you say, surprising him. The moment just before the rhythm began, when everything in the world seemed to pause and listen. It was the deepest quiet I'd ever experienced. And then, music. What kind of music? Can you describe the instruments? The melody? You shake your head gently. Not music you hear with your ears, music you feel with your entire being, like the rhythm of your own heartbeat, but vast, connecting everything. Johannes makes careful notes, but you can see the frustration growing in his expression. His academic training has prepared him to analyze symptoms and causes, not to grapple with descriptions of transcendent experience. When he interviews Peter, now a successful master baker with his own shop, he gets a different, but equally challenging perspective. It was the most exhausting and the most restful thing I've ever experienced, Peter explains. My body never stopped moving, but my mind found a peace I'd never known was possible. But surely you must have wanted it to stop. The historical accounts mention physical distress, bleeding feet, desperate families trying to intervene. Peter pauses, considering. Wanting it to stop would be like asking a river if it wants to stop flowing, or asking a tree if it wants to stop growing. It wasn't about what we wanted. It was about what we were becoming. Let yourself sink deeper into this warm drowsiness, dear listener, as we explore how mystery persists, even in the face of scholarly investigation. Your breathing is slow and even, your mind floating peacefully as these conversations from centuries past whisper themselves into your dreams. Johannes' most revealing interview comes with Thomas, now a young man working as a scribe in the cathedral. Unlike the others, Thomas has vivid memories of the entire experience, perhaps because his child's mind was more adaptable to extraordinary circumstances. I remember the moment I joined the dance, Thomas tells him. I ran to my mother with flowers, wanting to make her smile. When I touched her, it was like touching the surface of a deep, still pool and feeling all the life moving beneath it. The rhythm wasn't something that took hold of me. It was something I recognized, something I'd been waiting for my whole life without knowing it. And afterward, when it ended at the shrine, Thomas's expression grows thoughtful. It didn't end, exactly. It completed itself, like a song reaching its natural conclusion, or a story finding its proper ending. We didn't break free from something. We fulfilled something. Johannes spends weeks in Strasbourg, interviewing not just the former dancers, but their families, the physicians who treated them, the clergy who witnessed their experience. He examines Dr. Brunschwig's meticulous records, studies Father Benedict's theological interpretations, reviews the accounts of visitors who came from across Europe to witness the phenomenon. Gradually, he's forced to abandon his initial theories about mass hysteria or ergot poisoning. The evidence simply doesn't support those explanations. The dancers came from different backgrounds, ate different foods, showed no signs of the symptoms typically associated with such conditions. More importantly, their experience produced lasting positive changes, rather than the deterioration expected from psychotic episodes. His final report challenges the scholarly assumptions of his time. What occurred in Strasbourg in 1518, he writes, cannot be adequately explained by our current understanding of either individual psychology or group behavior. The participants describe an experience of connection to each other, to forces beyond ordinary perception, to dimensions of reality that our rational analysis struggles to accommodate. He concludes with a recommendation that surprises his academic sponsors. Rather than seeking to explain away such phenomena, perhaps we should study them as potential glimpses into aspects of human experience that our sciences have not yet learned to recognize or measure. The report is filed away in university archives, too radical for its time, but preserved for future scholars who might develop more expansive frameworks for understanding the full spectrum of human possibility. As decades pass, the influence of the Strasbourg dancing plague spreads in ways both visible and hidden. Other cities begin to report similar phenomena, not exact duplicates, but events that share certain characteristics: sudden onset of synchronized movement, participants who seem sustained beyond normal physical limits, eventual resolution through spiritual rather than medical intervention. A group of nuns in a Bavarian convent begins singing in harmonies so complex and beautiful that pilgrims travel from distant lands just to listen. The singing continues for weeks, the nuns requiring almost no food or sleep, their voices creating music that witnesses describe as more than earthly. Like the Strasbourg dancers, they eventually find resolution at a shrine, their extraordinary experience ending as mysteriously as it began. In the Low Countries, a group of weavers begins working in perfect synchronization, creating tapestries of unprecedented intricacy and beauty. They work day and night, their hands moving in coordinated patterns that seem to express some unspoken understanding. The tapestries they produce during this period are later recognized as masterpieces, their complexity suggesting knowledge of mathematical relationships that won't be formally discovered for centuries. A fishing village in Brittany experiences a phenomenon where dozens of residents simultaneously begin walking toward the sea at dawn, each day, moving in formation along the shore for hours before returning to their normal activities. The fish catches during this period are extraordinarily abundant, and the village prospers in ways that seem to defy natural explanation. Each of these events follows a similar pattern: sudden onset, apparent compulsion that participants don't resist, enhanced abilities or awareness, gradual transformation from compulsion to choice, eventual resolution through acknowledgement of the sacred dimension of the experience. Dr. Brunschwig, now elderly but still practicing, begins collecting accounts of these related phenomena. He's developed a network of correspondence throughout Europe, physicians, clergy, and natural philosophers who share his interest in experiences that challenge conventional understanding. We're witnessing something systematic, he writes to a colleague in Prague, not isolated incidents of madness or divine intervention, but manifestations of some deeper pattern in human experience. If we could understand the underlying principles, we might learn something profound about the nature of consciousness itself. His later writings develop what he calls sympathetic medicine, healing approaches that work with the natural rhythms and connections between people, rather than treating individuals as isolated systems. Many of his techniques seem to anticipate discoveries that won't be made for centuries: the importance of social support in healing, the role of rhythm and music in therapy, the connection between spiritual well-being and physical health. Meanwhile, Father Benedict, now an elderly bishop, has established what he calls contemplative communities, groups of lay people who gather regularly to explore experiences that transcend ordinary awareness. These communities don't seek to reproduce the dramatic phenomena of dancing plagues or singing nuns, but they cultivate the same qualities of openness and surrender that characterize those extraordinary events. Members learn to sit in silence together, to move in simple synchronized patterns, to listen for the deeper rhythms that underlie everyday experience. They develop practices that seem to access states of consciousness similar to what the Strasbourg dancers experienced, but in controlled, sustainable ways. These communities become centers of innovation in fields ranging from agriculture to architecture to music. Members often report enhanced creativity, deeper sense of connection to their work and each other, and a quality of joy that persists through both favorable and difficult circumstances. Rest deeper now, dear listener, letting these stories of connection and transformation carry you toward peaceful sleep. Your body is completely relaxed, your mind open to the mysterious currents that flow beneath the surface of ordinary life. The children and grandchildren of the original dancers carry forward something harder to define but equally real. They move through the world with a particular quality of attention, an awareness of the sacred dimensions hidden within mundane activities. They become leaders in their communities, not through ambition or force, but through a natural ability to help others find meaning and connection in their lives. Your own daughter becomes known throughout Strasbourg for her skill in helping women through difficult births. She seems to know intuitively when to encourage action and when to counsel patience, when to offer practical assistance and when to simply hold space for the mystery of new life entering the world. Mothers say she brings a quality of peace to the birthing chamber that makes even the most difficult labors feel like sacred ceremonies. Your grandson develops into an innovative architect, designing buildings that seem to enhance the activities that take place within them. His churches inspire deeper prayer. His guild halls foster more productive collaboration. His homes create atmospheres of comfort and harmony that visitors notice immediately but can't quite explain. These gifts pass down through generations, often skipping individuals or expressing themselves in unexpected ways. A great-granddaughter becomes a master gardener whose plants seem to thrive beyond natural explanation. A descendant in the 16th century develops new techniques for tuning musical instruments that create harmonies of unprecedented beauty and emotional power. Scholars in later centuries will puzzle over these family lineages, noting patterns of exceptional ability and contribution that seem to cluster around the descendants of the 1518 dancers. Some will propose genetic explanations, others will suggest cultural transmission of special knowledge or practices. But perhaps the truth is simpler and more mysterious, that profound experiences leave traces not just in individual memory, but in the very fabric of family and community, creating subtle influences that shape the possibilities available to future generations. The dancing plague of 1518 becomes a story that opens doors in the imagination, suggesting that ordinary people living ordinary lives might at any moment be touched by forces that transform not just their own experience, but the experience of everyone connected to them. By the dawn of the 17th century, Strasbourg had grown into one of Europe's most prosperous cities, a center of trade and learning where different cultures meet and mingle. The dancing plague of 1518 is now historical fact, recorded in chronicles and referenced by scholars, but its influence continues to ripple outward in ways both subtle and profound. The cathedral where Father Benedict once served has become a destination for pilgrims seeking not dramatic miracles, but something more elusive, a quality of peace and connection that visitors consistently report feeling within its walls. The current bishop, Father Benedict's intellectual successor, has continued developing the contemplative practices that emerged from reflection on the dancing plague experience. We've learned, he explains to visiting theologians, that the divine doesn't usually manifest in spectacular interventions that contradict natural law. Instead, it works through the deepest patterns of natural law, revealing connections and possibilities that our ordinary awareness cannot perceive. The cathedral now hosts regular gatherings where people from all walks of life come to explore what they call the deeper rhythms, practices that seem to access the same states of consciousness the dancers experienced, but in ways that can be integrated into daily life rather than overwhelming it. These sessions begin with simple synchronized breathing, progress to gentle coordinated movement, and culminate in periods of profound stillness, where participants often report experiences remarkably similar to what the original dancers described: a sense of connection to something vast and harmonious, awareness of music that has no external source, feelings of being part of a pattern too large and beautiful for the individual mind to fully comprehend. But unlike the compulsive experience of 1518, these contemporary encounters remain under conscious direction. Participants can enter and leave the states at will, carrying the insights and sensations back into their everyday activities without losing control of their faculties. Dr. Brunschwig's medical legacy has evolved into what later generations will recognize as an early form of holistic healing. His students, now master physicians in their own right, have developed treatment approaches that address not just physical symptoms, but the social, emotional, and spiritual contexts in which illness occurs. They've learned to listen not just to what patients say about their ailments, but to the rhythms of their lives, the patterns of work and rest, connection and isolation, meaning and emptiness that shape human well-being in ways that purely physical medicine cannot address. In the medical school at Strasbourg, Dr. Brunschwig's successors teach what they call the dancing plague protocols, not techniques for treating mass hysteria, but frameworks for recognizing when healing requires community response rather than individual treatment, when symptoms point towards spiritual yearning rather than bodily dysfunction. These physicians have documented dozens of cases where conventional treatments failed until healers began addressing patients' need for connection, for rhythm, for participation in something larger than their individual struggles. They've learned to prescribe community participation alongside herbal remedies, to recommend synchronized activities as readily as bloodletting, to recognize the healing power of shared experience. Meanwhile, the descendants of the original dancers continue to shape Strasbourg's cultural landscape in subtle but persistent ways. They become the master craftsmen whose work displays unusual harmony and proportion. They establish the merchant families known for honest dealing and innovative approaches to trade. They found the schools where children learn not just letters and numbers, but the art of listening to deeper currents of meaning. Your great-great-granddaughter will become one of Strasbourg's most celebrated musicians, composing pieces that seem to capture something essential about the relationship between individual voice and collective harmony. Listeners often comment that her music makes them want to move, to dance, but in ways that feel natural and joyful rather than compulsive. She carries within her cellular memory the echo of that summer when you surrendered to rhythms beyond personal control and discovered that such surrender could lead not to loss of self, but to connection with something infinitely larger and more meaningful than individual existence. The path of the forgotten steps leads not backward into history, but forward into possibility. Each generation must rediscover in their own way the truth that the dancers of 1518 stumbled upon, that human beings are not isolated individuals struggling alone against an indifferent universe, but participants in a vast, interconnected dance of existence that includes everything from the smallest grain of sand to the most distant stars. The steps are forgotten, not because they've been lost, but because each person must find their own way of joining the eternal choreography. Your steps, dear listener, are being traced right now in the gentle rhythm of your breathing, in the slow beating of your heart, in the peaceful settling of your mind as you drift towards sleep. Rest now in the knowledge that you walk the same path the medieval dancers discovered, connected to the same source, part of the same infinite story that continues to unfold in every moment of conscious attention to the mystery of being alive. Let your breathing slow now, dear listener. As we enter the final movements of this medieval mystery, feel yourself sinking deeper into comfort, your body completely at rest, while your mind drifts through these last gentle chapters of history. The Chamber of Echoes holds all the voices of those who danced, not just in 1518, but across centuries. Every footfall on cobblestone, every spin beneath summer sky, every moment of surrender to the rhythm that connects all things. The echoes don't fade here. They harmonize, creating music that exists only in the space between sleeping and waking. You float through this chamber like a visitor in a dream, observing without weight, listening without effort. The dancers move around you in slow, graceful patterns. Katharina, with her flower-dusted hands, young Thomas with his flower crown, Peter, stepping in time to bread rising, greet swaying like wheat in summer wind. Their movements create ripples in the air, visible currents of connection that flow between them and outward, touching every person who witnessed their dance, every family member who kept vigil, every scholar who tried to understand. The ripples spread in all directions, through time and space, carrying whispers of transformation. Close your eyes more deeply now. Let the echoes wash over you like warm water, each voice adding its note to the eternal song that played beneath the surface of that long ago summer in Strasbourg. In the grain hall, where the dancers found sanctuary, something remarkable takes root in the very stones. The walls have absorbed 16 days of extraordinary movement, of prayers whispered by desperate families, of Dr. Brunschwig's careful observations, and Father Benedict's growing wonder. The watchers in the walls are not spirits or supernatural presences, but something more subtle, the accumulated memory of human experience at its most profound. Every brick has witnessed transformation. Every beam has heard the music that no earthly instruments played. Every window has seen ordinary people become vessels for something greater than themselves. Years pass, and the grain hall returns to its mundane purpose. Wheat is stored, measured, and distributed, but workers notice small things. Grain stays fresher longer in this building, rats avoided entirely, and people linger after completing their business, reluctant to leave the peaceful atmosphere they can't quite explain. Children playing in the space spontaneously organize into circular games, their laughter creating harmonies that remind older residents of something they can't quite remember. Lovers meet here for quiet conversations, finding that words flow more easily within these walls. Artists come to sketch by the large windows, producing work of unusual depth and beauty. The watchers in the walls hold vigil still, keeping safe the memory of that summer when the boundary between earthly and divine grew thin, when 14 people danced their way into legend and left traces of transformation that will never entirely fade. Let your own walls, the boundaries of your conscious mind, grow softer now, more permeable to the gentle mysteries that surround us always, waiting to be noticed in moments of quiet attention. At the shrine of St. Vitus, where the dancing finally found its resolution, pilgrims continue to arrive, decades after the extraordinary events of 1518. They come seeking healing, guidance, or simply the peace that seems to emanate from this hilltop chapel like warmth from a hearth. The door that the dancers pass through, first Thomas with his flower crown, then one by one the others, has developed a peculiar quality. It seems to expand and contract slightly, as if breathing with the rhythm of some vast, slow heartbeat. Visitors notice it first as a feeling rather than a sight, a sense that the threshold between ordinary and sacred remains more permeable here than in other places. Father Benedict, now elderly and serving as the shrine's keeper, watches pilgrims approach this breathing door with the patience of someone who has learned to trust mystery rather than explain it. Some pause at the threshold, sensing something they can't name. Others step through with the confidence of those who know they're entering sacred space. What happened here? They often ask him, having heard fragments of the story from travelers and merchants. Something that happens everywhere, all the time, he replies gently, but usually too quietly for us to notice. People discovered they were connected to something larger than themselves. They danced with forces that exist in every moment, but rarely break through to conscious awareness. The door breathes with the rhythm of seasons changing, of hearts beating, of tides flowing. It breathes with the rhythm that moved 14 people to dance for 16 days, the same rhythm that moves planets in their orbits, and blood through veins and music, through the dreams of sleeping listeners like yourself. Feel that gentle breathing now in your own chest, slow and steady, carrying you deeper into the peace that comes with surrender to rhythms greater than individual will. In the deepest part of your dreaming now, you find yourself in a place that exists only in the space between heartbeats, in the pause between breaths. Here lies the breathing stone, not a physical object, but the essence of what the dancers discovered during their extraordinary ordeal. The stone breathes with the rhythm of the earth itself, with the slow pulse of geological time and the quick flutter of butterfly wings. It breathes with the rhythm of grain growing and bread rising, of children sleeping and lovers meeting, of stories being told around fires that burned centuries ago and will burn centuries hence. As you rest beside this breathing stone, you understand something the dancers knew but could never put into words. That individual consciousness is just the visible peak of a vast mountain of connection that extends down through families and communities, through species and ecosystems, through the living earth itself. The stone's breathing synchronizes with your own, and for a moment, you feel what Katharina felt in that first dawn when her feet began to move. The recognition of a rhythm that was always there, waiting to be noticed, waiting to transform ordinary movement into sacred dance. But unlike the dancers of 1518, you need not lose yourself in the rhythm. You can rest here in perfect stillness, breathing with the stone, connected to the vast web of existence, but maintaining your own peaceful center. Let each breath carry you deeper into this connection, deeper into the understanding that you are never truly alone, never truly separate from the great dance that includes all things. And so we come to the end of our journey, through the cobblestone streets of old Strasbourg, through the mystery of 14 people who dance their way into history and legend. But endings, like beginnings, are often just transitions to something deeper. The dancing plague of 1518 fades into the gentle mist of memory, but the truths it revealed remain as present as your own heartbeat. In every moment, the rhythm that moved Katharina and Thomas and all the others continues to flow through the world, connecting all things in patterns too vast and beautiful for the ordinary mind to fully grasp. Sometimes, in quiet moments like this one, you can feel it, the great dance that includes every breath you take, every beat of your heart, every thought that rises and falls in your peaceful mind. You are part of this dance always, whether you're aware of it or not, whether you're moving or perfectly still. The dancers of Strasbourg have returned to dust, but their story lives on, carried in the voices of storytellers, preserved in the careful notes of scholars, whispered in the wind that still moves through the Rhine Valley on summer evenings. Their dance continues in every act of surrender to forces greater than individual will, in every moment of recognition that we are all connected, in every breath that reminds us we are part of something infinite and eternal. Let your own breathing slow now to match the rhythm of this eternal dance. Feel yourself held by the same forces that held the dancers, supported by the same connections that connect all things. You are safe in this vast web of existence, free to rest deeply, to dream peacefully, to wake tomorrow morning, refreshed and renewed. The dance goes on, gentle and eternal, and you are part of it always. Sleep now, dear listener. Sleep peacefully in the knowledge that you are held by rhythms older than time, connected to stories that bridge centuries, part of a dance that includes all things in its graceful, never-ending movements. The cobblestones of Strasbourg remember. The grain hall keeps its vigil. The shrine door continues its gentle breathing. And you, warm and safe in your bed, are part of it all, now and always. Sweet dreams, and may you wake with the memory of dancing in your heart.